Joining us on the line to talk all things business and finance is Christina Brady from Black Tower Financial Management. Nice to speak to you. How are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
Not too bad. But not all go on the markets at the moment. Things are a little bit, flat, I think is the way that we say it in money terms, isn't it?
It is completely flat. It has been for a while now. There's not much going on. I think they're waiting for the rate decisions. I know the ECB has already made their decision. They cut rates by 0.5% to 3.5%. The reason for that isn't because everything's going swimmingly. It's because they're worried that things aren't going swimmingly. August has they're saying inflation is down to 2.2% across the Eurozone. However, growth is sluggish. And if you look at the main country within the Eurozone, Germany, that is just not looking good.
More bad news from there today as well.
I think business sentiment, was 11 months low. Basically, the economic outlook is worsening across German industries. It's not getting any better. Any improvement is just fading. It's just not getting any better at all. So they're hoping by reducing interest rates that will help stimulate the economy, but it's the lowest since October 23. It really isn't, and it's just not across Germany. It's hitting the whole Eurozone. People aren't feeling that positive. I think in Germany as well, we've got the automotive, the automotive sector, which has had huge problems. What's happened is obviously the EU is trying to force everyone to go towards EVs. It's not the way forward. And basically, most of the main manufacturers, especially in Germany and Italy, have suspended or said they won't meet their EV targets. You've got Fiat, which has just suspended its production of its electric 500 vehicle due to a really steep drop in demand. You've got Aston Martin that's delayed the launch of its first ever EV due to no demand. You've got Volvo, which has reduced its EV forecast and abandoned its plans to go electric by the end of the decade. Same for Ford, same for General Motors, Toyota as well. Renault says it's the same, Mercedes. And you get headlines saying, it looks like 24% of the market is going to be EV.
You knew I was going to go there. I mean, that's according to the Transport and Environment Group.
Yes,
today,
exactly, because they want people to believe that EVs are the way to go. But basically, if you see the year to date, the top 4 German car makers have seen double-digit declines. Mercedes-Benz is down 10%, Porsche's dropped by 15%, Volkswagen 17%, and BMW has plunged by 28%.
And they're all German companies, of course.
They are. So they're all saying they're going to have to cut jobs, they're going to have to close factories.
Something that Volkswagen have never
for the German economy.
They've never done it, have they? Volkswagen closed a factory.
No, they are now.
Unprecedented.
I think hybrids are still very popular. I think they are very good. I've got an Audi and it's got a small electric battery. Mm-hmm. And I must admit, my petrol consumption is hugely less than it was when I had my Mazda. But I think there are other ways to go. We've got, obviously gas, water. And if you look at what the car manufacturers are doing, you can see how bad it really is, no matter how much they'd like to paint a good picture. And as we know, Germany was a manufacturing hub of Europe.
Indeed.
So
and especially with cars. I mean, and on the second-hand car market, EVs, full EVs now, are actually really quite, what's the word? Affordable.
You can get them for nothing.
Yeah. Back to the markets then. So a survey out today from the Bank of America says that Germany is the most unloved stock market in Europe. It just goes from bad to worse for Germany, doesn't it? But the survey also found that the UK remains the most preferred equity market in Europe. Post-Brexit, down the line, it's still doing all right. I think Germany took over for a while, though, didn't it, as the main market?
I don't think Germany ever did. The UK, the reason is it's more established. Everyone knows the city of London. It's always been London, New York, obviously Tokyo, and Frankfurt was trying to become similar, and Paris, but they aren't. If you look at, from my perspective as a financial advisor, advising on funds, most of the best performing funds are run out of the UK or the US. It's just a fact of life. They've been going longer. They've got a better track record. So
stronger currencies generally, it seems. Not Britain always, but the dollar seems to be the one that runs the world.
Well, to a certain extent, yes. I think they are being challenged with that by China, etc.
Well, the yen and the ruble.
And
No, the ruble not so much these days, of course.
Yeah. And they've formed their own cartels with regards to money as well. I think the dollar, the pound, all lost their value when they stopped being linked to the gold standard. I think that was the biggest mistake ever. I think if they brought that back, it would shore up currencies and it would make the world a better place. But that's another topic. But as you said, yes, Germany is suffering the most at the moment, and that is not good. And along with them, also France. France is suffering. We've had the instability with no government. Macron has announced the government. People are still not happy. So if you look at the markets, they're flat, but the ones that are going down the most, nearly 1% of the CAC, which is the French market, and the DAX, which is the German market. So we'll have to wait and see. But Germany's got more problems in addition to
inherent problems, political issues there as
manufacturing.
well.
It's had a huge influx of migrants. They're not working. It's putting a strain on the social system, the same as we're seeing across Europe.
Well, they've actually gone back to border checks, so Schengen's gone out the window.
Yeah, and the thing that worries me, they're closing their borders. So we have seen, the Schengen is gone out of the window. I think that's going to become a big problem because the EU wants to push that along with green issues, and that's not going to happen. As I said, we really don't need this because the weaker Germany gets, the weaker the euro gets.
Some things seem to be doing quite well. I mean, post-Brexit, the airline's doing really well. Ryanair Chief Michael O'Leary, who's never 5 minutes away from another headline, talking about an upbeat assessment of business today, and fares will be materially lower than a year ago. Yeah, believe that, want to see it. But EasyJet, Wizz Air also jumping. Ryanair up 5.7% today.
It's not post-Brexit, it's post-COVID.
Sorry, I meant post-COVID.
Yeah,
apologies.
COVID, obviously everything took a dive. Yes, that should carry on, obviously, unless they try to force another pandemic on us. They did try with monkeypox, or mpox as they called it, but I think people understand that the World Health Organization is not the person to be listened to, although it's got most countries to sign up to a treaty to say if they declare a pandemic, they've got to agree to it. But yes,
well, there's a lot of West Nile fever.
Have recovered very, very well post-COVID, I must admit. And I think because people now want to travel, they understand that that freedom could be taken away from them at any minute. So while they can travel, they are going to.
Mm-hmm. There is a bit of issues going on with West Nile fever, but the numbers are very, very small at the moment. Some good news from the US today. Retail sales are beating forecast. Industrial output is up as well. This all bodes well then perhaps for the news from the Fed preparing to cut interest rates.
I hope so, and I hope the figures are correct, because if you remember, the employment figures looked very, 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 very rosy till they admitted that they had overestimated by 800,000. So it's only for a few months. I think we need more sustained growth, more sustained and consistent. But I think the Fed will reduce rates. They have to. People are being squeezed left, right and centre. I would like to say the Bank of England will as well. However, if you look in the UK, we've had practically zero growth for the last 2 months. Growth was at 3-point-something%. It is now 0.2%. England could easily dip into recession. And I think with what Labour's been saying about what it's going to do, the budget at the end of October, we could see the UK go into recession. And that is not a good thing. There's little or no growth. We've got the markets basically. If you were in England and you were making money from buy to let, that market has basically, it's fallen through the floor. Mm-hmm. It's really started in 2016 when the rules were changed, but you've got higher interest rates now, you've got more tax and regulatory issues, and it has fallen to a record low. And this is leading people to look outside the UK to buy properties to let out. And it has led to a bigger interest from UK individuals in Spain and France to buy properties to let out, and then hopefully they intend to move here when they retire if they can get a visa at that time.
Talking to Christina Brady from Black Tower Financial Management this afternoon about the current state of the world's economy, really. We were focusing on Europe and America before, but news today that the UK's debt mountain will almost triple to more than 270% of national income over the next 50 years because of pressures from an ageing population, the climate crisis and security risks. The Public Finances Watchdog, the OBR, the Office for Budget Responsibility, with that headline today. It's just getting worse and worse, isn't it?
It is. It's just making me laugh. Oh, dear. The thing that annoys me is in the UK, they could actually help reduce the debt. They could stop giving so much money away overseas and just postpone their climate initiative. They're giving so much money, I think it's 6 billion away to other countries across the world to help with climate initiatives, and the amount they give away in foreign aid, I would say not stop it altogether, just suspend it for 5 years. All payments, go through the accounts. If they gave me the accounts, I'm sure I could go through them and tell them where they could save, tens and tens of billions, rather than cutting pensioners' winter fuel allowance, which would only save 1 billion. I could cut the perks they get in the House of Lords. I could cut the perks the MPs get, civil servants get. And the way I would sell it is you're taking a hit to make the country become, less debt-ridden. You are helping all the normal people in the country. And then if they bit back and said, we're going on strike, we're not happy with this, I'd just produce the figures of how much they all earn, how much they claim on expenses, how much would be saved if they just gave that up by 5 years, and how much it would help, the debt situation in the UK.
We've always said, haven't we, that you should have the UK Chancellor's job or even the Prime Minister's job. We'll come on to Rachel Reeves in a moment.
Don't. But that's just not going to happen, is it? Because they all profit from it. It's all about power and money. Once you get into that position, if you look at Two-Tier Starmer, we found out his wife is getting free designer stuff. They get lots of gifts. It's just ridiculous. It's just a gravy train.
But very difficult to change once you're in it, according to MPs that I've spoken to. They go in with all the best intentions, but to change from within, which you would hope would be what they could do, it's pretty difficult. So what about that announcement then? We now know 780,000 UK pensioners entitled to the payment, the winter payment, will lose it. And this on the back of last year, all of these energy companies ripping pensioners off by putting in meters that they had to pay as you go. And it just seems like pensioners are an easy target.
They are. Labour thinks pensioners don't vote for Labour. They are wrong. So they're targeting people that they think no one's going to object to them targeted to. What they don't realise is they're on the verge of becoming pensioners as well. And I'm sure if any of them got parents, well, most probably they're wealthy because they give them money. But what annoys me is MPs get fuel allowances. Have you looked into this? They get, I think it's up to $3,000 a year to cover heating costs. Pensioners didn't get even that amount. And if you think, they're saying that over this winter, fuel costs in the UK for heating, for things like that, could go up double digits, 20, 30, 40%. It is absolutely ridiculous. I don't, and we're the laughing stock of the world. I was listening to the US news and they were mentioning it, how we were picking on, how the UK was picking on pensioners. It really, really isn't good. And on top of that, they're picking on pensioners, but then they're picking on non-doms. So they said they were going to make lots of money out of non-doms. Most of them have now left the UK, so they're not going to get income there. Now they're looking at the upper middle classes or people who've got savings. And they're saying what's going to happen in the budget is leaving a lot of people to do knee-jerk reactions. And for some people, that is the worst thing you can do. So one of the things that's been talked about is if you have a pension in the UK, you're allowed to take 25% tax-free. That was capped under the Conservative government at just over 268,000, which means you had to have, a pension pot of over $1 million. The rumour is that Labour will reduce that to 100,000. If that's the case, will they give people notice so they can do something, or will they do it instantaneously? We don't know.
Are we worried about this might well happen by the end of next month, for instance?
They're going to bring it in at the end of October. They could bring it in like Osborne did, just there and then. Mm-hmm. If you are going to take your tax-free out of your lump sum out of your pension, all well and good, but please have a plan for it. Don't just take it out and leave it sitting in a bank account with low interest rate, which means that your money is actually losing out on potential for further investment growth. You can, if you're in the UK and you take a cash lump sum out of your pension, if you haven't used your ISA allowance, you could put 20,000 of it in your ISA. And as long as Labour doesn't stop the ISA allowance going forward and say for the next 5 years you can't add to your ISAs, or if he reduces the amount you can put in ISAs, you could put in another 20,000 next year. But you have to remember,
is it a decent return from an ISA?
Sorry,
so is it a decent return from ISAs? Probably better than the bank, certainly.
Well, it depends what you're going to do. If you're going to put it in a cash ISA, no. But if you're going to put it in an equity ISA, which will be similar to where your pension would be invested in, yes, you can make money. But you have to make sure that whatever you do, it is something that gives you tax-free growth, not something. If you buy stocks and shares, normally, if you make a gain or loss, you have to declare that and pay tax each year. With your pension, you invest, you have a pension pot, you don't have to pay tax each year. You get compounded growth, the same in ISA. So look at where you're going to put that money. What you've got to do is you could take your tax-free lump sum and you could say you're going to give it to your family. You're going to give them a gift. The problem is, if you do give a gift, you've got to leave for 7 years or else they will pay tax. And so, again, and also you've got to make sure you can afford to give that money away. Remember, it's your pension money. Some people are worried about their houses because they're worried about capital gains. And not only capital gains, but inheritance tax. Inheritance tax could rise, which means that some people are considering handing their main asset, which is their property, over to their children in the hope that it won't be counted for inheritance tax. But if you still live there and you don't pay a going rent, you are seen as not having given it away. Okay, so you don't, even if you live 7 years, they won't get it inheritance tax free because the government was saying it was all a tax avoidance scam.
How would they know?
Because you know who lives in that house. Okay, if you stay living in that house, you will have to pay council tax. You will have the bills coming out of your account, unless your children are going to pay everything, but then they'll have to give up their own main residence if they have a house and say that's their main residence. So you've really, really got to be careful. You've got all the legal costs of the transfer. You've got to pay rent. You've got to seem to have a contract with them. So be very, very careful. Also putting your property in trust. We don't know what they're going to do with trust. Again, you have to live for 7 years if you're going to give it away. If you don't, you could get a tax bill and you could end up achieving nothing.
Well, Rachel Reeves did say that the budget at the end of next month will require difficult decisions on tax, on spending and on welfare, pretty much everywhere, I guess.
Everywhere except MPs' pay, obviously. But you've got... Some people have been phoning me saying, look, we want to take out equity release. And I've had some people from the UK phone me who know me and say, what about equity release? Equity release. Whoa. Schemes are very expensive. They come with upfront charges. They've got interest that rolls up and it needs to be repaid on death. And if you don't live after 7 years after giving a gift, if you give some of your money away, most of it will come back into your estate. And these costs may end up meaning that you achieve little by giving away your property. You have to be very, 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 very careful about what you're going to do.
The premiums always look a little bit worrying for me on those equity release plans. I've not seen one way.
I never, ever have agreed with them. I've never, ever sold them. I will never sell them. I've heard too many people losing everything through it. There's nothing left at the end. And they've spent most of the equity release money doing up their property, which is no longer theirs. So they get a new kitchen, new bathroom, have an extension. That property is no longer theirs. On death, it's sold to repay their equity release, and any cash left over, in theory, goes to the family. So you have to be very, very careful. They're saying capital gains. Capital gains could go up. Again, be careful. Some people might sell stuff now thinking that they will avoid capital gains, but where are you going to put that money? What are you going to do with it? you've got to be very, very careful. So if you are thinking of making any sort of decisions, make sure they're right for me. I have one friend in the UK who phoned me, and they were worried. They wanted to take their tax-free amount because it would be over 100,000, and we discussed it for a long while. And I said, only if you are going to put it in an investment vehicle that you are not going to touch and you're still going to treat as a pension. Also, they're raising the pension age, so it was 55. It wouldn't, 57. It's going to go up all the time before you can touch your pensions. And what you have to remember is, when you have a pension pot, when you take money out, it's treated as income, so you pay income tax. When you have an investment, when you take money out, you cannot be taxed on the return of capital, only the growth. So therefore, if you take 100,000 out of your pension and you put it into investments, say, you've used up your ISA allowance, and then you start taking income from that. Say you take 10,000 a year and it's only grown by 5%. You will only be taxed on the gain element, not the whole amount you take out. Mm-hmm. So there is a huge difference with regards to how much tax you will pay on the money you take out of pensions versus in investments. And people need to remember that as well.
Okay.
Saying that, in the UK, I thought financial advice was dearer in Europe. Oh, my God, it's not. I've had people phoning me from the UK saying, look, someone wants to give me advice on my pension. They want to charge me 3%. Someone's phoned up the other day and said 5%.
Wow.
We charge, depending on how much, these were large pensions. So for a large pension, we charge maybe 2% maximum, and they wanted to charge 1% a year to service it. We charge usually, if it's a large one, 0.5 up to 0.75. So actually, the charges in the UK at the moment, if you're not careful, are very high.
And of course, since Brexit, there's that other thing to remember, that not all UK companies can advise you if you're living in Europe.
They can't advise you. There's very few. I haven't heard of hardly any that can advise you. They don't have the proper authority to be financial advisors or wealth management advisors like Black Tower in countries in Europe. And what it meant for Black Tower is we've had to get licenses in every country we work in, and we had to move our head office from Gibraltar to Cyprus, which is part of the EU, so we could still work within the EU. And it was a huge cost to Black Tower, but we've done that so we can still service our clients. But we're lucky because we have an arm in the UK that is regulated in the UK. We have an arm in the US that is regulated in the US. We've got Dubai, we've got Australia. So wherever Black Tower works, we have the regulation in those countries. And if people are with us in Europe and they decide to go back to the UK, they can always go to our UK office. We can give them that transition of service. And you have to be careful that what you are getting is advice that is applicable to the country you live in. Mm-hmm. I know many people have tried to transfer their pensions and they've been passed on to Money Helper Helpline or whatever is MoneyWise, and they've said, you can take 25% tax-free and then you can do buying annuity, do this. If you live outside the UK, no, that is not the case. If you live in Spain, there is no tax-free amount. Well, there is. On the 30, the first amount you take out, 30% can be tax-free, but thereafter it's taxed, so it's not all tax-free. In France, there are limits as well. So every country has different rules. Mm-hmm. So if you speak to someone who's only used to the UK, you're getting improper advice. And I would say to people who live in Spain, France, anywhere in Europe, who have left assets in the UK, like investments, if there isn't a big capital gain tax, if you close them down or move them, I would suggest moving them outside of the UK, out of reach of the UK government, and putting them something that's tax efficient in the country you live in. Or there are things outside of the EU that are still tax efficient. They are not in any way seen as tax avoidance or evasion. They're in countries that are approved by the EU, and you can get some good fixed rate capital guaranteed deposits with these countries, and that is something people seriously need to consider.
A couple of headlines on big companies today in technology. Microsoft planning to a new $60 billion buyback. UniCredit are seeking ECB approval to potentially buy up to 30% of Commerzbank. That comes amid the hostile takeover, I think is how Christina labelled it, of the Sabadell Bank by BBVA. But some positive news, I think, drug makers betting billions of pounds that targeted radiation could become the next cancer breakthrough, as Pfizer is saying that its experimental drug for the deadly condition that causes appetite and weight loss in cancer patients is showing positive trial results. Now, I know you're not that happy about Big Pharma and the money that they make, but those are some positive stories in cancer treatment.
They are. I would rather they just said they could cure cancer, but why would a pharmaceutical company want to do that? It would mean no money for them. But anything that can ease the suffering of people who get cancer, in my book, it is a good thing, as long as the side effects aren't worse than those that they're countering already. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, that is good news. Regarding Sabadell and BBVA, yes, that will just mean there'll be one less bank on the high street in Spain. It will lead to job losses and branch closures, and customer service in most Spanish banks isn't that good, to say the least. So that means it's going to get even worse. I know some people trying to get into their bank to see someone, they have to book an appointment, and it's a complete nightmare. Let's see what happens, but it is a hostile takeover. Sabadell are not happy about it, but it looks like we'll go ahead. Again, with Commerzbank, the thing that's holding it up there is Deutsche Bank holds quite a large proportion of Commerzbank as well. And at one point, it was rumoured they were going to take over Commerzbank. I don't know how the regulators are going to deal with that.
They're still looking at the ECB, still looking at that. So pharma, banks and big tech, are they still perhaps things where we could invest our money?
Yes. If you are an investor, all my investors at the moment are invested in tech, biotechnology, which includes pharmaceuticals, and even in the technology companies, there are some pharmaceutical companies that have got bits in there. Banks, not so. I don't tend to invest anything that is solely invested in banks because their stocks are so volatile. But we'll have to wait and see there. Banks have made money over the last few months. With Sabadell and BBVA. If you remember, Sabadell took over CamBank, and it had a load of debt from them and a load of properties that were repossessed. So we'll have to wait and see if this, but I think, BBVA are a very strong bank. They will take over Sabadell. Maybe we'll see a change. Maybe it will become a better bank. We'll have to wait and see.
OK, and we just heard from, I said we know somebody who's working on photovoltaics to do with cars, and he's been in touch, David, the scientist from Italy. He said there's about 7 of them testing the Toyota Prius with battery and PV sunroof, and a Kia as well. But the final results of a year-long experiment due around Christmas, and it's all open research, so we'll get a copy of that. He said, we need less pollution, more solar and clean energy, but there's not been quite enough long-term engineering rather than politicking. I'd love to see an EV Citroen 2CV, he said, with a tiny battery and a photovoltaic sunroof and the innovative backseat dynamo pedals that you mentioned.
Yeah, I would. I think it at the moment, they are promoting things as being environmentally friendly, being good for everything in our world when they're not. Obviously, someone is making a lot of money out of it. And it's all a smokescreen. It's actually worse than what we're replacing. So anything like this would be a welcome addition to the market. And let's see where it goes. Let's hope they don't try and hide it. Like they've hidden all other technologies that could actually be good for us, but they couldn't make enough money from them. So let's see what happens. But as I said, EV vehicles are not the way forward, or the way they're made at the moment. The batteries are too environmentally damaging. The way they're made is just well, it's a travesty that they've been promoted so widely by so many governments. All
right, some of the places where we could put our money then, Christina, what could we do?
I think when people invest, you've got to understand what you want this money to do for you, what you need this money to do. And when you come and see a financial advisor, we will ask you lots of questions. We will work with you to give something that suits your needs. At Blacktail, we're very lucky. We can access any products that are tax efficient in Spain and other ones outside Spain that maybe you have to report on a Modelo 720, but will give you other benefits than a tax efficient one. talking to a financial advisor is the only way you'll know what's on offer and what's best for you. When you see a financial advisor, the only thing I have to say is don't ever be rushed into any decisions. Don't feel pressurized to do anything. Always take your time and look at what's on offer and read through it. Never ever just sign something unless you've been with that financial advisor for a while. I've got some clients that have been with me 14 years or more, and they come to me for an investment. I put together a proposal, we'll talk through it. They're happy to sign up because they know they've been with me a long time and they've always been very, very happy with the service we've given them. And at the moment, it's a good time to invest. The markets aren't too high. If you'd invested in September 23, you'd be doing absolutely brilliantly now. If you invested in 22, early 23, then you're still not doing too well. But there are things out there that can suit most people. Obviously, there are minimum investment amounts, 25,000 minimum, but even below there are some interest paying bank accounts in the Isle of Man that we can recommend either on a fixed term or an instant access, and we can give you the links and the contact person at these places to talk to. So we just don't only deal with products that we give you, we can actually offer you solutions outside where other people can help you. And obviously we don't benefit from that, but it makes the client happy, and that's at the end of the day, the client always has to come first.
Okay, can always get in touch via our usual number, 684 455 844 on WhatsApp, or studio at BayRadio.fm, or directly to Christina in the following ways.
Yes, you can email info@blacktowerfm.com. Please put on there for the attention of Christina via Bay Radio, and they come straight through to me. If not, you'll have someone phoning you who's like a filter. And it's much easier if you come direct. The last week, most people have been coming direct to me, and it's been much easier to answer their questions. You can either go to our website, blacktowerfm.com, and fill in a contact form. You can look up the phone number for the office, obviously on the internet, which is 965058212. You can go onto Bay Radio advertisers, click on our logo, and it will take you to our website. Anything else fails, you can always email studio@bayradio.fm, and they will pass any inquiries on to me. And remember, we cover the whole of Spain. It's not just the Costa Blanca, including the Balearic Islands and the Canary Islands. We're in France, we're in Italy, we're in the UK, we're in Portugal. So if you have anyone listening in the US, anyone listening who's got any financial questions, please get in touch. If I can't help you, I'll post you on to the best person that can help you within Black Tower.